The smell of turpentine is a time machine. One breath of it, that sharp, pine forest sting mixed with the dusty sweetness of linseed oil, and I'm not in a freezing industrial loft in Brooklyn anymore. I'm back in Florence, scraping centuries of candle soot off a Madonna's cheek, holding my breath as I try to find the flush of life a master painter put there 500 years ago. It was 6 a.m. The north light was just starting to bleed through the frosted skylights of my studio, turning the floating dust motes into suspended gold. I wasn't restoring a Madonna today. I was preparing a canvas for a Titan. I ran my hand over the linen, triple primed with lead white, tooth like fine sandpaper, just enough drag to grab the pigment. It had to be perfect because the contract I'd signed yesterday was thicker than a phone book. It contained non-disclosure agreements, exclusivity clauses, and a check that had cleared this morning for an amount that made me uncomfortable. It was enough to pay my rent for 2 years. It was enough to fix the leak in the roof that was currently dripping into a bucket near the freight elevator. But money usually came with strings, and this money came with chains. The freight elevator groaned. The gears ground together with the sound of metal dying, announcing the arrival of my client. I wiped my hands on a rag stained with Prussian blue and burnt umber. I checked my shirt. Flannel. Paint-flecked. Unapologetic. I wasn't going to dress up for them. They were hiring Elias Thorne, the recluse, the savage technician, as Art Forum had once called me. They wanted the grit. They just didn't want the dirt that came with it. The elevator grate rattled open. First came the suit. Marcus, the PR handler. He stepped out into the dust like he was afraid he might catch poverty. He was wearing a headset and tapping on a tablet, already midway through a crisis. Then came the dress. It was midnight blue velvet, heavy with silver embroidery that climbed up the bodice like frost on a window pane. It had a high collar, long sleeves, and a train that required its own zip code. It was a magnificent piece of couture, a structural marvel of boning and fabric. And inside it was a woman who looked like she was suffocating. Julianne Vane, CEO of Vane Global. 40 years old, one of the most powerful women in the hemisphere. I had seen her face on the cover of Forbes, in the business section of the Times, usually accompanied by headlines like, "Can she hold the line?" or "The Vane Legacy in Peril." In the photos, she looked imperious, unreachable. In my studio, under the unforgiving morning light, she looked tired. The kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. "Mr. Thorne," Marcus announced, not looking up from his screen. "We have 45 minutes. The lighting needs to be dramatic. We need Titan of industry. Think Thatcher meets Vogue. We need power. We need stability." Julianne stepped off the elevator. She moved stiffly. The dress weighed 50 pounds if it weighed an ounce. She looked at me. Her eyes were gray, the color of a winter sea, and completely guarded. "Mr. Thorne," she said. Her voice was lower than I expected, smoky, textured. "Thank you for fitting us in." "I didn't fit you in," I said honestly, leaning against my workbench. "You bought the month, exclusive access. Clause 4, Section B." I gestured to the platform I'd built in the center of the room. "Up there. There's a mark for your feet." Marcus snapped his fingers at a stylist who had trailed in behind them, a nervous woman carrying a garment bag and a can of hairspray. "Fix the hair. It's moving. We can't have movement." I watched as they swarmed her. The stylist sprayed chemicals into the air until a cloud of synthetic lavender choked out the turpentine. Marcus barked orders about angles and chin lifts. Julianne didn't say a word. She stood there, a mannequin in a velvet cage, letting them poke and prod her. I walked over to my palette. I squeezed out a line of lead white. The real stuff. The toxic stuff that dries harder than bone. I mixed it with a touch of yellow ochre. "Clear the set," I said. Marcus stopped talking mid-sentence. "Excuse me?" "I can't see her," I said, not looking at him. I was looking at Julianne. "You're blocking the light. Everyone out. Go get coffee. There's a place on the corner that burns the beans. You'll love it." "We stay," Marcus said, bristling. "I am responsible for the Vane brand integrity. I need to ensure this portrait projects the right message to the shareholders. The Centennial Gala is in 4 weeks. If this portrait doesn't scream competence, the stock takes a hit. The message right now is, stop talking or I start throwing paint," I said calmly. I pointed my palette knife at the door. Portraiture requires silence. It requires attention. I cannot paint a subject who is being directed like traffic. Out. Marcus looked at Julianne. Miss Vane, this is unacceptable. We have a schedule. Julianne looked at me. For a second, the mask slipped. I saw a flash of gratitude in those gray eyes. It was gone in an instant, replaced by the CEO. Go, Marcus, she said. I'll be fine. Go. It wasn't a request. It was an order from the woman who signed his checks. Marcus huffed, adjusted his headset, and ushered the stylist back into the elevator. The grate clanged shut. The gears groaned downward. Silence rushed back into the room, heavy and thick. Julianne let out a breath. Her shoulders dropped half an inch. The velvet dress rippled. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me yet. Standing still is harder than moving. She adjusted. She was good at taking direction. Too good. She locked her jaw, tightened her eyes, and froze. She gave me the face from the magazine covers. The Iron CEO. I started to sketch. Scritch, scratch. The charcoal bit. Into the canvas. I drew the dress. It was technically perfect, and it was boring as hell. It had no pulse. You hate it, I said after 20 minutes. She didn't move her head. Hate what? The dress, the pose, the job. All of it. It doesn't matter what I hate, Mr. Thorne. It matters what the board sees. And what do they need to see? Strength? She said. My father died 6 months ago. He was a force. A monument. The stock price has dropped 12% since I took the chair. The vultures are circling. They think I'm soft. They think I'm a placeholder until my cousin can stage a coup. So you want me to paint a lie? She flinched. I want you to paint a legacy. This portrait hangs in the boardroom for the next 100 years. It has to look like I belong there. If you have to wear a costume to look like you belong, I said, putting the charcoal down, then you don't belong. She broke the pose. She turned to face me fully. The movement made the heavy velvet swish. You don't know anything about my world, Elias, she said. She used my first name. It sounded strange on her tongue, intimate and accusing at the same time. In my world, perception is reality. If I look like iron, they will believe I am iron. Iron rusts, I said, and it's cold. People don't follow iron. They follow blood. They follow heat. I walked over to the platform. I was close enough to smell her now. Not the hairspray, but the skin underneath. It smelled clean, expensive, and terrified. I'm a restoration artist, Miss Vane. That's my trade. I take old paintings that are covered in dirt and yellow varnish, and I clean them. I strip away the layers that don't belong until I find the original brushstroke. The truth. I gestured to her. That dress? It's varnish. It's obscuring the work. It's a $40,000 Gallia Le Havre. It's a cage. Look at your hands. She looked down. Her hands were clenched into fists at her sides. The knuckles were white. Your hands are fighting the fabric, I said. You're holding your breath because the corset is too tight. Your eyes are watering because the fumes from that hairspray are stinging them. If I paint this, I paint a woman in distress. Is that the legacy you want? She stared at me. Her lower lip trembled, just once. She bit it to stop it. What do you want me to do? She whispered. I can't change the dress. Marcus approved it. We paint the dress, I said. For them. But we do it my way. Take a break. 5 minutes. Walk around. Drink some water. And for God's sake, shake your hair out. It looks like a helmet. She hesitated. Then, she reached up. She pulled a pin from the chignon. Then, another. A heavy coil of dark hair fell onto her shoulder. She shook her head. The transformation was immediate. She looked 5 years younger. She looked human. I felt a sudden, sharp ache in my chest. It was the feeling I got when I uncovered a hidden detail in a painting, a bird in the corner of a landscape, a smile on a somber face. There you are, I thought. Better? I said, keeping my voice professional. Now, let's try again. But this time, don't pose. Just stand. The weeks bled into each other. The routine was brutal. Julianne would arrive at 6 p.m. after her day of battling shareholders and navigating hostile takeovers. Marcus would drop her off, verify that I was on schedule, and leave. As soon as the elevator doors closed, the atmosphere shifted. The first week was a struggle. She held onto the armor. She stood on the platform, encased in velvet, reciting her talking points while I painted. "We're expanding the renewable sector," she would say to the empty room, rehearsing her speech for the gala. "Vane Global is pivoting to sustainable infrastructure." "Tilt your head left," I'd say, mixing a shade of Prussian blue for the shadows in the velvet. "And stop reciting the press release. Tell me something real." "That is real. It's the quarterly projection." "It's boring." "Tell me about your father." She went silent. I kept painting. Scrape. Mix. Apply. "He snored," she said suddenly. I paused, brush hovering. "He snored?" "In the opera," she said, a small smile touching her lips. "He loved Wagner, but he couldn't stay awake past the first intermission. He'd fall asleep in the box seat. I had to nudge him with my elbow before the lights came up so the press wouldn't see." "There," I said. "Hold that expression." "What expression? The one where you're not a CEO? The one where you're a daughter who misses her dad?" I worked fast, trying to capture the softness in her eyes before it vanished. By the second week, the physical toll of the dress became undeniable. We were taking a break. Julianne was sitting on a stool, rubbing her ribs. "It leaves marks," she admitted. "The boning. It digs in." "Take it off," I said. She froze. The air in the studio went thin. "Excuse me?" I was cleaning brushes in a jar of solvent. I didn't look at her. I knew that if I looked at her, I would spook her, or I would reveal how much I wanted to see her without the armor. "The dress," I said. "Take it off. Just for the break. You can't breathe in it. If you can't breathe, you can't stand. If you can't stand, I can't paint. I'm wearing a slip underneath, but it's fine," I said. "I'm a painter, Julianne. I've drawn anatomy classes since I was 18. A body is just geometry and light to me. Go behind the screen." She stood up. She walked behind the folding screen in the corner. I heard the heavy rasp of the zipper, the rustle of stiff fabric pooling on the concrete floor. A sigh of pure, unadulterated relief. When she stepped out, I stopped cleaning the brush. She was wearing a white silk slip. It was simple, bias cut, falling to her knees. Her arms were bare. Her collarbone was visible, a sharp, elegant line. Without the heels, she was shorter, more grounded. She hugged her arms, looking at me defiantly. "Happy? You look like you can breathe," I said. "I feel exposed." "You're not exposed. You're unvarnished." I walked over to the easel. I took the canvas of the Armored Queen, the one with the velvet dress, and I lifted it off the stand. I set it against the wall, face in. I put a fresh, blank canvas on the easel. "What are you doing?" she asked, stepping closer. "The deadline. I'm taking a study." I lied. "For the underlying structure. I need to understand the anatomy to paint the dress correctly. Like an architectural drawing before you put up the facade? Sit on the stool." She sat. She didn't pose. She slumped slightly, resting her elbows on her knees, her hands clasped. Her hair fell over her face. She pushed it back. I picked up the charcoal. "Don't move," I whispered. I drew her, not the CEO, the woman. I drew the curve of her spine, the tension in her neck, the scar on her forearm that the dress always hid. "Where did you get that?" I asked, sketching the faint line. She looked at her arm. "Sailing accident. When I was 12, my father told me not to grab the line. I grabbed it. It burned right through the skin." "You didn't listen to him?" "I never listened to him," she said softly. "That's the irony. Everyone thinks I'm his clone, but I fought him on everything. He wanted to strip mine. I wanted wind farms. He wanted dominance. I wanted partnership. So why are you wearing his armor?" She looked up at me. Her eyes were fierce. "Because I have to win the vote. If I win, I can change the company." "That's a heavy price." "It's the only price." I switched to paint. I worked feverishly. I mixed flesh tones, titanium white, yellow ochre, a touch of alizarin crimson for the blood beneath the skin. I painted the way the light hit her shoulder. I painted the weight of the world she was carrying. "Julianne," I said. She looked at me. "This is the real portrait," I said. "The board will never accept it." "Then we won't show them. This one is for you." She stood up. She walked over to the easel. She stood next to me, looking at herself. I look tired, she said. You look dangerous, I corrected. You look like someone who has walked through fire and is still standing. That's not weakness. That's power. She turned to face me. We were inches apart. I could see the flecks of gold in her gray eyes. I could feel the heat radiating from her skin. The smell of vanilla was overwhelming. I wanted to kiss her. It wasn't a professional thought. It wasn't an artistic thought. It was a man looking at a woman and recognizing a kindred spirit, someone else who was trying to build something true in a world of fakes. I raised my hand. I almost touched her face. My thumb hovered near her jawline. She didn't pull away. She leaned in, just a fraction. Her breath hitched. Dirt. Dirt. Her phone buzzed on the table. The spell shattered. She stepped back, flustered. She grabbed the phone. It's Marcus, she said, her voice tight. The board meeting ran late. He's coming to pick me up. Put the dress back on, I said, turning away to mix paint that I didn't need. Don't let him see you like this. He won't understand. The betrayal happened 3 days before the gala. Beat 6. I was in the studio, putting the final glazes on the real portrait. It was hidden behind a stack of empty frames, but I pulled it out whenever I was alone. I was on the phone with Silas, my mentor and the head of conservation at the Met. I have a problem, Silas, I said, looking at the canvas. I've painted 2 portraits. One is a lie that pays the rent. The other one is the best thing I've ever done. The Vane Commission? Silas asked. Elias, be careful. That family eats artists for breakfast. I know. But this second painting, it's the truth. Keep it safe, Silas warned. If you painted it on their dime, technically they own it. Intellectual property clauses are nasty. I know the clause, I said, eyeing the contract on my desk. Clause 14. All drafts, sketches, and studies are proprietary. But this isn't a draft. It's... The freight elevator rattled. I hung up. I have to go. They're here early. The doors opened. It wasn't Julianne. It was Marcus. And he wasn't alone. He had 2 men with him, movers, wearing Vane Global uniforms. Step away from the easel, Thorne, Marcus snarled. He wasn't on his phone today. He was fully present, and he was angry. I stood my ground, holding my palette like a shield. You're early. And uninvited. Marcus marched into the room. He walked right past the armored queen portrait on the main easel. He went straight to the back corner. He knew where it was. He pulled the real portrait out from behind the frames. I knew it, he hissed. I tracked her phone. She was spending too much time here. Put that down, I said, my voice low. That is not for you. Everything you paint during contract hours belongs to Vane Global, Marcus said. He turned the canvas around. He looked at the image of Julianne in the slip, tired, raw, real, his face twisted in disgust. Look at this. She looks like a refugee. She looks broken. She looks human, I said. And she looks stronger in that slip than she ever looked in your velvet straitjacket. Strength is perception, Marcus shouted. The board wants a titan. You gave them a woman having a breakdown. If this leaks, the stock tanks. He gestured to the movers. Take it. No, I said, stepping forward. You take the one on the easel. That's the one you paid for. This one stays. I painted it off the clock. Don't lie to me, Marcus sneered. We own the paint. We own the canvas. We own the image. We are taking this, and we are destroying it. Destroying it? We can't risk this existing, Marcus said. It's a liability. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I slipped my hand in, hitting the speed dial for Silas. She sent you photos, didn't she? I asked loudly, for the benefit of the phone in my pocket. That's how you knew. She was proud of it, Marcus scoffed. She's delusional. She thinks authenticity is a strategy. It's suicide. Movers. Load it up. The movers grabbed the canvas. I lunged, grabbing the edge of the frame. Let go, Thorne, Marcus warned. Or I call the lawyers. And the police. You want to be sued for breach of contract? You want to lose your studio? You want to never paint in this city again? I looked at the painting. I looked at the movers. I thought about the open line to Silas. If I fought them now, the painting might get damaged in the struggle. If I let them take it, Silas might be able to intercept. Careful with the edges, I said, letting go. It's still tacky. They marched it into the elevator. Marcus stopped at the door. Finish the other one, he commanded. The gala is on Saturday. Make sure the velvet shines. Make sure she looks like a goddamn statue. The doors closed. I was alone with the armored queen. I grabbed the phone. Silas? Did you hear that? I heard. Silas's voice came through. Grim. They're bringing it to the Vane storage facility? Or the dump? Marcus said destroy it. But he's corporate. He won't burn it himself. He'll hire a disposal team. I know the disposal team Vane uses, Silas said. They also do transport for the gallery. Let me make a call. I spent the next 2 days in a fugue state. I painted. But I didn't paint with love. I painted with cold, technical hate. I finished the armored queen. I made the velvet look rich and suffocating. I made her skin look like porcelain, hard, cold, impenetrable. I gave her the eyes of a statue. It was technically flawless. It was a masterpiece of deception. I called Julianne, straight to voicemail. I went to her office tower. Security stopped me at the turnstile. Miss Vane is in pre-gala seclusion, the guard said, reading from a screen. No visitors, especially Mr. Thorne. She had cut me off. She had let Marcus take the painting. She had chosen the armor. I went back to the studio. I packed up the armored queen. I wrapped it in brown paper. But as I was cleaning up, I found something. Under the workbench. A small sketchbook. I opened it. It was a charcoal study I had done on that first day. She took her hair down, just her eyes, and the line of her shoulder. I ripped the page out. I found an old, gold leaf frame in my pile of junk. I matted it. I framed it. I put it in the inside pocket of my tuxedo jacket. The Centennial Gala was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Because of course it was. The Temple of Dendur was filled with sharks in tuxedos and barracudas in ball gowns. Champagne flowed like water. The air smelled of money and desperation. I stood by the stage, next to the covered easel. I felt like an imposter in my rented tux. Then the music swelled. Julianne entered. She was wearing the velvet dress. The armor was back. Her hair was lacquered into a helmet. Her diamonds were blinding. She walked through the crowd, shaking hands, smiling that tight, practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. She saw me. She froze for a beat. Then she walked over, Marcus trailing her like a shadow. Elias, she said. Her voice was brittle. Ms. Vane, is it done? It's exactly what you asked for, I said. It's flawless. It's a lie. She flinched. I had no choice, Marcus said. He said, the board was already drafting a vote of no confidence. If I showed weakness, if I showed that other painting, so you let them erase you, I saved the company, she whispered furiously. That's my job. I protect the legacy. Your job is to lead, I said, not to hide. Ladies and gentlemen. The chairman of the board tapped the microphone. He was 80 years old and looked like he was carved out of dried tobacco. If everyone could gather round. Tonight, we celebrate a century of Vane Global, and we unveil the portrait of our CEO, Julianne Vane, who carries the torch forward. The room went quiet. The spotlight hit the easel. Julianne stepped up to the podium. She looked at the crowd. She looked at Marcus, who was standing in the front row, giving her a thumbs up. Then she looked at me. I didn't smile. I just reached into my pocket. I pulled out the small, framed sketch. I held it up. Just for her. She saw it. She saw her own eyes, wide and real and messy. She took a breath. Her hand went to the high collar of her dress. She pulled at it as if it were choking her. My father, she said into the microphone. Her voice wavered, then steadied. My father built this company on steel. He built it on hard reality. For the last 6 months, I have tried to be him. I have worn his armor. She looked down at the velvet dress. She looked at the covered painting. But I am not him, she said, her voice ringing out in the cavernous hall. And we are not a steel company anymore. We are a company of people, and people are messy. People are imperfect. She turned to me. Elias, the painting. It's the one Marcus approved, I warned her softly. The armor. She looked at the covered canvas. Then she looked at the crowd. I made a mistake, she announced. The portrait under this cloth. It's a lie. It's a beautiful, expensive lie. painted by a brilliant artist who was forced to lie by a handler who was afraid of the truth. Gasps rippled through the room. Marcus looked like he was having a cardiac event. "I cannot unveil this," she said, "because it isn't me, and I won't start my next century with a forgery." She stepped down from the podium. She walked over to me. "Do you have it?" she asked. "Have what?" "The other one. The real one." Marcus confiscated it. He sent it to be destroyed. "I didn't destroy it," a voice rumbled from the wings. We turned. It was Silas. He walked out, carrying a large canvas. He winked at me. "Got your message, Elias." The disposal team decided to take a detour to the conservation lab. We touched up a scratch on the frame. Silas set the painting on the easel, right in front of the covered one. The crowd murmured. Marcus was shouting something into his headset, but nobody was listening. The painting was raw. The background was a storm of abstract gray brushstrokes. But the figure? It was Julianne. In the slip. Hair messy, shoulders bare, the scar on her arm clearly visible. Her eyes were looking straight out of the canvas, challenging, exhausted, and incredibly powerful. It wasn't a picture of a CEO. It was a picture of a survivor. Julianne stared at it. Tears pricked her eyes, ruining her makeup. "It's beautiful," she whispered. She turned to the crowd. She didn't apologize. She didn't smooth her dress. "This," she said, pointing to the canvas. "This is who leads you. I am tired. I am scarred. And I am fighting every single day to keep this ship afloat. If you want a statue, go to the Greek wing. If you want a leader, I'm right here." For 3 seconds, there was silence. Absolute, terrifying silence. Then, a slow clap started. It was the old chairman. He was nodding. Then, the room erupted. We escaped the party an hour later. We were in the back of a town car, heading away from the noise. Julianne was still wearing the velvet dress, but she had unzipped the high collar. She had kicked off her heels. "You're fired," she said, smiling. I figured, no more corporate commissions. Marcus is fired too. Security escorted him out. "Good riddance." She turned to me. The passing streetlights illuminated her face. She looked like the painting. "I kept the sketch," I said, handing her the small frame from my pocket. She took it. She traced the lines of her own face under the glass. "You saw me, even when I couldn't see myself." "That's the job," I said. "Restoration. Bringing out the original condition." "I have a problem," she said. "I have a big empty wall in my apartment now, since I'm definitely not hanging the Armored Queen, and the real one is apparently being acquired by the Met's permanent collection, thanks to Silas. I can recommend some gallery prints." "I don't want prints," she said. "I want to commission a new piece." "I'm expensive, Miss Vane. My rate just went up." "I know." She shifted on the seat, closing the distance between us. The scent of vanilla and rain filled the car. "But this one isn't for the boardroom. It's for me." She reached out and took my hand. Her fingers were warm, interlacing with mine. "I want you to paint me. Without the armor. No velvet, no expectations. Just Julianne." I looked at her. I saw the trust in her eyes. The varnish was gone. The cracks were there, but they were beautiful. "That," I said, my voice low, "is going to take a lot of sittings." "I'm in no rush," she whispered, leaning her head on my shoulder. "Take your time. Get the lighting right." I lifted her hand to my lips. I kissed her knuckles. "Driver," she called out. "Change of destination. My place." She looked back at me, a challenge in her eyes. "Bring your brushes, Elias." "I always do."